Now, one great advantage about channels when it comes to making selections is something called a luminance-based selection. Now, oftentimes there's going to be selection scenarios where it's pretty cut and dry. You just simply select an object, extract it from the layer, and it's going to be good to go. In some cases, there are going to be elements that have some subtle transparency, and most of the selection tools in Photoshop just aren't going to be able to do what channels can do in this case. For instance, this image of this ballet dancer here, I've got a lot of interesting things going on here. Some hair elements and the arms and everything like that are contrasting nicely against this solid white background. However, the dress is a little translucent. You can actually see some of the background going through there. Well, if I used any other selection method, it might run into some problems, and it might be too solid or anything like that. It won't show the transparency like it should. So I'm going to use a luminance-based selection to extract it. Now what that is essentially using the brightness values to create an active selection through the channels. And I'm going to do this by using the RGB composite channel at the top here. So in my channels palette, I'm going to hold down the Command key on Mac, Control on Windows, and then click once on that RGB preview icon. And you can see it's made an active selection of all the white area in the background and some of the area of the subject here. And other really darker areas you can see are unselected, as indicated by the marching ants here. Now what I'm going to do is actually inverse the selection, because it selected all the bright areas of this image, which are the background and some areas of the subject, but I don't want those areas. I actually want to get the darker areas of this image. So go under the Select menu and choose Inverse. Now what I'm going to do is press Command or Control J, and that's going to copy that selected area to its own layer. Now if I turn off the background layer, you can see it selected a good portion of the dark areas, and this is because we inverted the selection, remember that. A good portion of the dark areas and a lot of the lighter areas as well. Now here's the cool trick. I'm going to press Command J several times to build up the density of that image until I see the subject fully appear and there's no more transparency in the rest of the subject. But as you notice, so it took several copies here. You can see in the layers panel it took several copies to do that. I'm actually going to select all of these and press Command E to merge them all together. Now notice what happened is, behind the subject, through that dress, we can actually see the transparent background somewhat. In fact, if I were to create an object, let's actually create a color-filled object here, like a red box, and I pass this behind her, it's showing up in some areas behind her, but look, where the dress is transparent or translucent, you can actually see through it, and thus I can actually apply this to a background or something like that. It probably needs to be built up one more time there. But now I can apply this to the background, and I can see that transparent background showing through the dress just like I would expect it to in reality. So I'm able to use the luminance of this image to create that selection and extract those elements, keeping some areas really subtly transparent while other areas are remaining more opaque. And this is another great advantage of using luminance-based selections in Photoshop. So again, something to think about. When other selection scenarios aren't necessarily working for you, you can use a luminance-based selection using the brightness values of the image to create a much more realistic selection.